Chapter 1. The Return. My name is Eleanor, and this is my story. A story of love, regret, and the choices that changed everything. After 10 years away, I returned to Maple Grove, my small hometown, for the first time. It was the annual Harvest Festival, a time of laughter, music, and celebration. But I wasn't here to celebrate. I came back for Jacob. Jacob was my best friend growing up. We did everything together, played in the wheat fields, shared secrets under the stars, and dreamed of a future far beyond Maple Grove. But when I left for college in the city, I broke his heart. He begged me to stay, but I didn't. His final words still echoed in my mind. If you leave, Eleanor, don't ever come back. I thought I'd moved on, but something inside me couldn't let go. So when I heard Jacob would be at the festival, I knew I had to return. As soon as I arrived, memories flooded back. The smell of the wheat fields, the sound of children laughing, and the sight of the familiar streets. And then, I saw him. Jacob stood in the center of the square, surrounded by lights and laughter. He looked different, older, stronger, but his eyes were the same. When our eyes met, my heart stopped. But he wasn't alone. A beautiful woman stood beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. She smiled at him with a warmth that made my stomach twist. Her name was Emma. I had heard about her. She was Jacob's fiancée. As the festival went on, I tried to avoid Jacob, but fate seemed to have other plans. We kept bumping into each other, and every time we did, there was tension in the air. One evening, I found myself alone at the old oak tree where Jacob and I used to meet as kids. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see him. Eleanor, he said softly, why did you come back? I hesitated. I don't know. Maybe I needed to see you again. He sighed and looked away. A lot has changed, Eleanor. I'm not the same person you left behind. I know, I whispered, but I can't stop thinking about us, about what we had. Before he could reply, Emma appeared. She had followed him. Her eyes flashed with anger as she looked at me. So this is why you came back, she said sharply. To ruin what Jacob and I have? No, I said, shaking my head. That's not why I came. But Emma didn't believe me. She turned to Jacob. You need to choose, Jacob, her or me. Jacob froze, torn between his past and his future. The rest of the festival was a whirlwind of emotions. Jacob and I shared stolen moments, but they were always overshadowed by guilt. Emma, on the other hand, wasn't afraid to show her anger. She confronted me at the town square, in front of everyone. You had your chance, Eleanor, she said loudly. You left him. Don't come back now and take him from me. I wanted to fight back, but she was right. I had left. I had hurt Jacob. Maybe he deserved better than me. On the last night of the festival, there was a grand bonfire. Everyone gathered around to watch the flames light up the sky. I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Jacob and Emma together. They looked happy. Maybe this was my sign to leave. But just as I turned to go, Jacob appeared beside me. Eleanor, he said. his voice firm. I need to talk to you. We walked away from the crowd. To the old oak tree. Jacob looked at me, his eyes full of pain. Eleanor, he said, I can't forget you. I've tried, but I can't. Tears filled my eyes. Jacob, I didn't come back to hurt you. I needed to see if there was still something between us. There is, he said, but I don't know if it's enough. I'm engaged, Eleanor. I've built a life here. And I don't want to ruin that. I said, but Jacob, if there's even a chance for us, I need to know. Chapter 2, Secrets and Storms. The Harvest Festival had always been a time of joy. But for me, it had become a storm of emotions. Each glance, each word exchanged with Jacob felt like a crack in the life I thought I had left behind. That night, the festival's biggest event, the lantern lighting, was about to begin. Couples and families gathered at the riverbank to release their glowing lanterns into the night sky. As I stood there, clutching a lantern of my own, I felt a presence beside me. You shouldn't be here. Emma's voice was sharp, slicing through the cool night air. She stood close, her eyes burning with determination. You don't belong here anymore, Eleanor. I met her gaze, my heart pounding. I didn't come back to take anything from you, Emma. I came back to find closure. Closure? She scoffed. You left him, Eleanor. You broke his heart. And now, after all these years, you think you can just walk back into his life like nothing happened? Before I could respond, Jacob appeared, his expression unreadable. What's going on here? Emma turned to him, her voice trembling. Jacob, tell her to leave. Tell her this is our life now. Jacob's eyes met mine, and for a moment, the world around us seemed to fade. Eleanor has as much right to be here as anyone else, he said quietly. Emma's face fell, her confidence shaken. She turned and walked away, leaving Jacob and me alone under the lantern-lit sky. I'm sorry, he said, his voice low. This wasn't how I wanted things to go. I shook my head. You don't have to apologize, Jacob. This is your life now. And I have no place in it. He stepped closer, his voice tinged with frustration. But you do, Eleanor. You always have. I've spent years trying to move on, trying to build something with Emma, but then you showed up, Anne. And what? I whispered, my heart racing. And I realized I'm still in love with you, he said, the words hanging heavy in the air. Before I could respond, a sudden downpour interrupted us. The rain drenched the lanterns and sent people running for cover. Jacob grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the old barn, where we used to hide as kids. Inside, the air was thick with unspoken words. The rain hammered against the roof, mirroring the storm inside me. Jacob, I said, my voice trembling, you can't say things like that. You're engaged. You're building a life with her. I know, he said, his voice breaking. But I can't ignore how I feel. Being with Emma, it's safe, it's easy. But it's not you. Tears welled up in my eyes. Then why didn't you stop me all those years ago? Why didn't you fight for me? His eyes darkened, the pain of the past resurfacing. because you didn't give me a chance. You left, Eleanor. You didn't look back. The silence between us was deafening, the weight of our shared history, our regrets, and our love pressed down on us. I came back to find closure. I said finally, but maybe I was looking for something else. Maybe I was hoping you'd still feel the same way. Jacob's hand brushed against mine, his touch sending a shiver down my spine. What if I do? Before I could answer, the barn door creaked open. Emma stood there, her face pale and wet from the rain. So this is where you ran off to, she said, her voice quiet but filled with pain. Jacob stepped back, his expression torn. Emma, save it, she said, her voice trembling. I deserve better than this, Jacob. If you're still in love with her, just say it. The air was thick with tension as the three of us stood there, each waiting for someone to break the silence. I don't know what to say, Jacob admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. Emma's eyes met mine, a mixture of anger and sadness. Then I'll say it for you, she said, turning to leave. Goodbye, Jacob. As the door closed behind her, the rain began to subside. Jacob and I stood there, the weight of what had just happened settling over us. What now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jacob looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of love and regret. I don't know, he said, but I know I can't lose you again. Chapter 3: The Weight of Choices. The aftermath of Emma's confrontation left a heavy tension in the air. The Harvest Festival was supposed to be a time of joy, but for me, it had become a battleground for my heart. Everywhere I went, I felt the whispers, the judging eyes of the townsfolk. Jacob tried to talk to Emma, but she wouldn't hear him out. She packed her things and left town early, leaving only a single note. Don't come looking for me, Jacob. I hope you find whatever it is you're searching for. That night, Jacob came to see me at the inn where I was staying. His face was pale, his eyes clouded with guilt and sorrow. She's gone, he said, his voice heavy. I nodded, unsure of what to say. I felt responsible, yet I couldn't deny the flicker of hope inside me. Eleanor, Jacob said, stepping closer, I don't want you to blame yourself. This is on me. I should have been honest with her, and with myself, long ago. Jacob, I whispered, this isn't fair. Not to Emma, not to me, and not to you. We can't just pick up where we left off as if nothing happened. He reached for my hand, his touch warm but hesitant. I don't want to lose you again, he said, but if you want me to let you go, I will. Just tell me what you want. What did I want? Part of me longed to stay, to rebuild what we once had, but another part of me knew that the past couldn't be erased so easily. The pain we caused, the people we hurt, it all felt too heavy to carry forward. I don't know, I admitted, tears brimming in my eyes. I don't know if we can ever make this right. Jacob's grip on my hand tightened, as if he was afraid I'd vanish. I'll wait, Eleanor. However long it takes, I'll wait for you to decide. Chapter 4: Letting Go Under the Moonlight. The final night of the festival arrived, marked by the grand harvest moon dance. The entire town gathered in the square, dressed in their finest, under the glowing full moon. It was a tradition of love and celebration, but for me, it felt like the closing act of a bittersweet story. I stood on the edge of the square, watching as couples swayed to the music. Jacob found me there, his eyes searching mine. "Dance with me," he said softly. I hesitated, but his outstretched hand was impossible to resist. He led me to the center of the square, and as the music swelled, we moved together under the moonlight. For a moment, it felt like nothing had changed, like we were just two kids again, dreaming of a life together. But the truth was, everything had changed. "Jacob," I said, my voice trembling, "I love you. I always have. But love isn't enough to undo the choices we've made." His steps faltered, but he kept holding me close. "What are you saying, Eleanor?" "I'm saying goodbye," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. He stopped dancing, his hands dropping to his sides. The hurt in his eyes was almost unbearable. "I can't stay here," I continued. "I came back to find closure, and I've found it. But we can't rewrite the past, Jacob. We can only move forward. And for me, that means letting go." The music played on, but the world around us seemed to blur. Jacob took a deep breath, his jaw tightening as he fought back tears. "If this is what you need," he said, his voice breaking, "then I'll let you go. But I want you to know that I'll never stop loving you, Eleanor." "Never." I leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his cheek, a silent thank you for everything we had shared. Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing under the harvest moon. Epilogue: A New Light. Months passed, and life in Maple Grove went on without me. I returned to the city, carrying with me the memories of a love that shaped me. Jacob stayed in Maple Grove, finding solace in the community he loved. I heard that he started working with the local youth, teaching them about farming and life in the fields. As for Emma, she moved to another town and began anew. Her name popped up occasionally in mutual acquaintances' conversations, and I was glad to hear she was doing well. And me? I found peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from having all the answers, but the kind that comes from knowing you've made the right choice. Every autumn, when the harvest moon rises, I think of Jacob. I wonder if he's looking at the same moon, remembering the way we danced under its glow. And even though we're apart, I know that a part of my heart will always belong to Maple Grove, and to him.